So Maggie, class is also a huge specter in the experiment and the entire story. Um, Eugene Robinson, an author and columnist at the Washington Post, calls the fractures in the Black community disintegration. Um, does your experiment, does your experience in a place like Jay's show that the idea of sort of one Black community no longer exists? Did you have any
Oh
thoughts about
yeah,
that as you went through this in terms of the fractures that we're seeing across class lines?
and we're a huge fan of Eugene's, and we're so happy that he's been able to push this issue into the dialogue because it's something that we don't talk about. And I remember a lot of times before the experiment, before we actually decided to do something about all of these feelings, we'd say stuff like, you know, if we're at a dinner or a conference or something, and you know, we're probably one of two Black couples at the event or something that happens all the time. You know, John goes to a Harvard alumni event, or I go to a University of Chicago alumni event, or some kind of business conference. It happens a lot, a lot. And you know, we'll sit there and having a great time talking about the news of the day, talking about kids, suburban life, and we'll sit there and we say it every time. It's like, John, we have more in common with these people than we do with our friends, our brothers and sisters on the West Side, with the people I grew up with in Liberty City, with the people you grew up with in Detroit. You know, what if we're in a room with them? What are we going to talk about? You know, and we talked about that and just how wrong that is. We really should be, if anything, closer to those folks who share our history here, our culture here, and actually, you know, are part of our struggle. The whole thing that makes the Black community special is that we've stuck together and that we always fought for one another because we were exploited or denigrated as a class. What are we if we lose that? And the other part of the discussion, when we really tried to intellectualize it, is if we don't bring that back, then we're just what other folks dictate us to be. We're the stereotypes, we're, you know, a culture to make money off of, you know, we're the hip hop culture or whatever they define us to be. Before, we were represented by our unity, by our proud and our African heritage. All of that is, you know, was gone once you got to this place. Once you graduated from Harvard, you trade in all that stuff. You are now a Harvard alum, so you do Harvard stuff. You don't do the stuff that brought us together. So we would talk about it all the time, but of course you never had to feel it because we were never in those rooms where we had to encounter those folks. And I remember even when we wrote, when I took the time to write out an abstract about the empowerment experiment, just not just our doing it, what we thought could result. I remember we had these like 10 little points of, you know, what would make the experiment special. And one of those points was connect the struggling to the successful. That was one of the things. It was like, wow, if we could, folks like us, we don't go to the marches. We don't go to Push on Saturdays. You know, Push is in Chicago, where we're from. And after I was laid off from my big corporate gig at McDonald's, and I was living off my fat severance package, I started volunteering at Push. So I would go on Saturdays. That's where the community was. That's where it was just so beautiful. People would come together. We'd talk about the issues. We'd network. And there were very few people like me in that room. It was mostly just kind of working class folks. None of the Harvard grads, the University of Chicago grads. So my folks don't go to those Saturday community meetings. They don't go to the rallies. They don't go to the town hall meetings when so-and-so bill is up to create, you know, zoning laws, all that stuff, that community stuff. We don't do that. So our whole point was maybe we can't make them do that. We can't make them march anymore. But if we can get them to do little things to seek and support our businesses, all of us want to do more. Maybe this is their escape. Maybe this is a way to make them feel connected to the community again. Because I don't think that we're alone in feeling bad about that. We've separated, and it hurts those folks in the West Side. But what's really awful about it is when I made that connection, that living that year, and we still do it now. We still go to the West Side. We know business owners in the West Side, and they know us. The point was when we were there and we felt that disconnect, that's what inspired us to do more, because we remembered that these are good people. Mm-hmm. These are hardworking people. These are people who came from the same places that we came from. We are no different. That's the whole point. We're not different. I may have a little bit more in common with a University of Chicago grad, but we are not different. We're the same. And if anything, my job, just the same way she would defend me, I should be defending her. And they were doing that. When I walked into those stores, they honored me. We're the crown jewel. Look, here's one of the girls who made it out, and she's successful, and they're proud of me. I need to reciprocate that pride by being proud of her and supporting her and saying, here's a strong black mother trying to do something for her family. She's in the community, but we're not doing that part. So they're giving it to us, but we're not giving back to them.
Talking about reciprocity.
Right, right. And I think it's about time that somebody calls out our folks on that. And people think I'm a little tough on us, but everyone knows what I'm saying is true. Everyone knows what Eugene is bringing out is true. But we hope in the experiment that we give you a way to do something about it. Just look for some business. Just spend a little time on the West Side. And let's bring some of these folks together so that we can show the world how we used to be.
Speaking of this, Farmer's Best. Let's talk about what really became one of your favorite Black-owned businesses, a business that you relied on throughout this year, and it didn't make it.
No.
It didn't make it through the year, and there were other businesses in the epilogue that you mentioned that were quality Black-owned businesses that did not survive. What impact did that have on you, and did that have on this social experiment that you and your family were engaged in?
In many ways, when I think about Kareem Bia, perfect guy, smart, driven, committed to the community, hired from the community, located his business in the community, did not live in the community. He actually lived in a white suburb too. So he could have opened up shop in his white suburb, probably have done well. But he chose to be in that community because he wanted to be a role model for those kids. And that he failed makes us think that we failed. But at the same time, that our keeping this alive and keeping this discussion alive is really my just hoping, and I say this every time I speak, I do this hoping that we can bring Kareem back. I owe it to him. He was everything that we can be and everything that we are not. He was perfect. We were imperfect. He had everything that we needed in that community. It was a perfect store, great value, great selection. In my opinion, just as good as any Whole Foods. But the consumers, and I think because he was Black and we told the world he was Black, did not support him. A mile away, a disgusting place, your quintessential food and liquor, a mile away, always packed with Black people. Here we have this place, everything shone, it was shine in this place. I mean, it was asparagus from New Zealand. I mean, it's just, he brought in all kinds of fresh produce. Everyone was impeccably dressed. It always opened on time. Great quality fish and a coffee shop in there. Had everything. Down the street, this place, the meat stank. The produce was molded. Prices out the roof. Greek owned, it was dirty. Even the owners treated the customers with disrespect. But for some reason, we flooded to this place because that's who we are, that's our job, but we let Kareem die. And we fought for Kareem. You know, in the book, we did everything we could to give that store a chance. My family did, but the community did not respond. And it's just a perfect case in point of why we fail. It's not because we don't have great business owners. It's because our consumers have lost faith in our business owners, and we're not trying our best to support them. If we had to support Kareem just a little bit, he'd be opening his 5th store right by now. When I walked into that store that day, I saw him opening his 5th store. I was like, oh, this is it, thinking that most folks were like me, and they'd see a quality place owned by a fantastic entrepreneur and would want to support him. I was sorely disappointed. And he represents the whole problem that we have now. I know Kareem is not alone. I bet you there are